Hello. So it's 2 minutes past. There may be some others joining. There is over 30 registered for the call. And I'm so pleased. Met Karen at 8 UK this morning for the same session. So we've got different time zones. So really appreciate you coming not just once, but twice in a day.
It's a delight. Thank you.
Karen and myself met sort of more properly when we both did Henley Business School's supervision program some years back. She's a master certified coach with over 20 years experience. She's a coach educator and a mentor coach and supervisor. She was also program director for coach education at Henley Business School. And she says she's retired, but she doesn't always tell the truth.
That's so
So,
true.
so Karen, thank you so much for being with us and over
You're
to you.
welcome. You're lovely. Thank you. And great to see you all and from different places. That's lovely. So I was just going to spend the time tonight talking about well, as we've put, about coaching beyond competencies and beyond being a perfect coach. So I wanted to use I last October I published a book which was kind of based on this webinar really is based on the ideas that were in that book. So I might just refer to it, but what I wanted to do was offer a few thoughts, but also offer some questions and reflections for yourselves. And if we get a chance, perhaps a little time when you can go in smaller groups and just talk about what we've been reflecting on. So I have got a few slides, and mainly, oh, somebody's just putting in, Sergey's putting in, you're reading my book now and loving it. Oh, thank you so much for saying that. That's really lovely. I haven't paid him a penny, honestly, for that, for that recommendation. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Let me put some slides up. And I was saying this morning, the slides often, they're to remind me what I wanted to say to you. So you don't worry about them. But Claire is going to make sure that they go out to everybody if you're interested in getting them later on. Um, but I really just wanted it to be a conversation. So please feel free to stop me, jump in, say anything you want to say, even challenge. These are just my thoughts. I'm certainly not sitting here as an expert. But I mentioned the book, and Sergey's kindly mentioned it as well. It's called Breaking the Coaching Code: How Great Coaches Transcend the Rules. And it's really, I really wanted to think about when I was writing this book, it came from my experience, both training coaches, supervising and mentoring, just as Claire does. And a lot of the thoughts about this book came from that, because what I was noticing with a lot of the coaches I was working with was they seemed to be held back from being themselves in coaching. And when I talked to them and asked them what was going off, they were talking about breaking the rules, or even about the ICF police being on their shoulders and you're not allowed to say it. In fact, I was mentoring somebody this morning after the webinar, and he was saying, in fact, I'm just looking at my notes that he said something about what I'm really good at is listening, noticing, and I'd really love to give feedback, but we're not allowed to, are we? And I was saying, oh, where do these myths arise from that when, we can't offer something in coaching? So just working with coaches and realizing they really have got some great instincts and intuitions, but they were holding themselves back. So I just really wanted to explore that in this book, and then talk to you in this webinar. I've put that comment there about what I'd really like to do is help you in this short time we've got together to walk yourself home to your own unique brand of coaching. I use that kind of, I know it sometimes can feel like a cheesy saying, but I pinch from Ram Dass, the idea that we're all just walking each other home. And I always think about that in coaching. And my interpretation of that is walking people home to their own wisdom, both in coaching and in training coaches, and really trying to free coaches up to use their wisdom um, more fully in coaching. So that's the plan. That's what I was hoping for. When I've talked to people about this before, I get a couple of common responses. And it made me think about, is it revolution or evolution I'm talking about? Because some people are almost rubbing their hands and saying, oh, great, we can break the rules. I love the title of the book, Let's Break the Rules. And then some people who say, oh, but how ethical is it to break the competency rules is really what I'm thinking about. But I really think this is not about just throwing the rule book out. It's really about how we can use them as a guideline and honour the competencies, but work within them and clear out some of the myths that have built up around what we are allowed and what we're not allowed to do as coaches. One of the people I looked into his work, his research, as I was preparing to write the book, was David Drake. And this is a quote that I really liked of his, talking about this: as novices, we learn the rules; as intermediates, we break the rules; as masters, we might change them and influence how they're changed. And as artisans, we transcend the rules. So I think this is as part of where the title of the book came from, about how can we transcend the rules, just go beyond in some ways. And this quote always also makes me think about, it's not wrong to stick to the competencies, of course, and we all have to learn them when we first start coaching, don't we? We all have to learn how to demonstrate the competencies, how we can be best. But it's as we become more experienced, we can just loosen our hold on them a little bit. One of the other big influences for my book was a book that I love by Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan priest, and his book Falling Upwards. And in that book, he talks about, based on psychological theories like Carl Jung's, around the first and second stage of life. And he's talking about it from a spiritual sense, really, talking about, we all have to start where we work on rules and conforming and all of that in the first half of life. But really, some of us, we want to develop and move into that second stage of life. In what he's talking about, why it's called Falling Upwards, is that change sometimes usually comes with a fall. We have to fall to get to the second. It might be, I don't know, that you lose your job, marriage breaks up, you've some loss or some disability, or something happens that's a big, profound thing that takes us into the second stage of life. And when I was thinking about this with coaching, I really got quite inspired by this idea of, in the first stage of life, we have to learn how to do certain things, how to contract well, how to listen, ask questions, all of that stuff. And then we want to move into the more being of a coach rather than doing coaching in that second stage of life. And I was thinking, well, what would the fall be for coaching? And one of my thoughts around this, it may not be true, but one of my thoughts was probably the introduction of AI and the coaching platforms. And there's a big disruption in coaching now. It's my personal view that if we are coaches who stay in the first stage of life, just very strictly following the rules, coaching bots, coaching, they can do that as well, if not better. I'm told by somebody who's well in the know that the coaching bots are now being able to coach to PCC level. I don't know how true that is. But if we are just going to do bigger, better, faster coaching, which I call it, performance coaching, not going beyond that, I think we're in trouble. But if we can be with someone and be fully present and see people and have the being of a coach, I think we offer something far more than AI can offer. So this is all for me around this journey from doing coaching to being a coach. And so the premise of the book and my thinking and what I wanted to say to you tonight is when we think about this, as Carl Jung says, we can know all our theories, master all the techniques, but as we touch a human soul, be just another human soul. So as we sit across from someone else, either on screen or in person, how can we be that human soul? And I was thinking, and what gets in the way of us being another human soul? And I think sometimes, certainly in my experience and in my experience working with other coaches, our concern about what we should and shouldn't do can get in the way of us being the best coach we can be for somebody else. And one of the things I like to think about with this is the other things that might get in the way of us just being another human soul. And let's face it, if I hope I'm not just speaking for myself here, but we're all messy humans. We've all got stuff that's, none of us have got things sorted. We bring our own messiness to a coaching conversation. But I wondered, my question really is, can we legitimately walk other people home if we're still far away from our own home, our own self? And I think it's a bit of a myth that we can be objective observers in the coaching conversation, the coaching relationship, in my opinion. I was saying this morning, when I first had my very first coach training, and I'm sure it's certainly the training I do, and I'm absolutely convinced that Claire's will be the same. We've moved from this now, but I was taught at the beginning that really I needed to be a blank slate, that I needed to be, I need to get my stuff out of things. So I didn't have any opinions. It was all about working with the other person. And the more I've worked, and I'm sure many of you will have got there before me, but I just think that's a myth that we can do that we can come like a blank tablet. We can't, we're not a blank tablet. We bring everything into the coaching session. And I just wanted to offer this evening a little bit of a teaser in and a couple of questions to ask you to maybe think about what you're bringing in to your coaching sessions, if that's okay. And there is absolutely no judgment about this because we're all bringing things in. But the only thing that we need to know is raise our awareness about it. So my first question, if you've got a paper and pen or a tablet or whatever you want to write on, or maybe you just want to think about it, is to ask you, and you don't have to share this, but it would be lovely if you want to. Why do you coach? What brought you to coaching? Seems a really simple question, and it is on the surface, but why do you coach? And I wonder if anybody wants to either speak it out, or if you're a bit shy about that, you could put it in the chat so we can have a look. What sort of things are you coming up with? Why do you coach?
I don't mind sharing briefly.
Lovely.
Um,
Yeah.
I would say it will come from a coaching conversation with a brand new person I had this morning. I would say normalizing the messiness of life,
Lovely.
helping to normalize
Welcome to
and
normalize.
do something about it.
Oh, lovely. Beautiful. I love that. Thank you. What about anybody else? I can't see the chat, so I don't know whether you can, Claire.
Well, nothing in the chat yet. My thing is to enable corporates to be happier. That was one thing that, so many corporates are
Yeah,
stressed and
yeah,
yeah, that was one of my missions, especially with
yeah.
team coaching.
Yes, yeah. So to bring some happiness into what must be a tough environment now. It's just getting tougher, isn't it? And I guess even if you're not working with corporates, bringing some happiness to people we're working with is great. Lovely. Often people will say, I want to help people, or certainly people who are just starting out on a coaching journey. I love helping people, or I want to add value. So at Henley, we get a lot of people who've had a big corporate executive career, and now they want to give back, if you like. So they'll talk about, I want to add value to what's happening for people. And I think I certainly, when I first started, came thinking I wanted to help people. But I use this quote from Elizabeth Gilbert, and in fairness, it's not about coaching this. She's talking about the creative process in her book, Big Magic. But she said, please don't try to help me. I mean, it's very kind of you to want to help people, but please don't make it your sole creative motive, because we will feel the weight of your heavy intention and it will put a strain in our souls. And why I think that's a really useful one is, if we're worried and we want to help people, we've really got an agenda. And I say that as a recovering rescuer who really, part of my whole persona is helping. If anybody knows the Enneagram, I'm definitely a 2 on the profile, which is the helper, the carer. So I really want to help people, but that can be problematic for lots of reasons. One of which is not everybody wants help, which I found interesting when I was doing the Enneagram training. And we did it in the narrative tradition, when people were talking about the different profiles, and people really didn't like the 2s very much, because they were a bit overbearing and always wanting to help. So there's something about getting to know what our agenda is, and let's just take that one step further. I forget this quote, just to say, when we've got an agenda, it's not wrong that we've got an agenda. It's just being aware of it. And I found in a book around it was the myth of the untroubled therapist, and what I think Marie, but I can't remember her second name, who wrote it. She said about Carl Rogers, and we know Carl Rogers was the guy, for person-centered therapy, really talked about all those necessary and sufficient conditions for people to really grow. But even him, part of his reason for working like that was that he worked with clients because they provided him with an intimacy that he found really difficult in his personal life. So, we have these gurus out there, but actually we've all got these needs that we're looking to get fulfilled. But the second question I wanted to ask you is, what client feedback do you fear most? So what's the worst thing that a client could say to you? So, let me choose that example that I had, that if I want to help people. So maybe at one time I would have really feared, I don't so much now, but I would have really feared somebody saying, well, this is not helping at all. This is not helping me. So what's your fear, or what's the worst feedback you could hear? Again, just write it down if anybody wants to either put it in the chat or speak up. That'd be great.
I'm happy to share.
Yes, please do so.
Karen, and I did ask that question of myself as I was reading your book.
That's good.
A couple of things came up. One of them is definitely that one and I've had that experience many times, I think, when you're feeling that the clients are still stuck, quote unquote. Yeah. And I'm picking up that frustration, and it becomes a loop which reinforces my frustration, and then and you come out at the end of the session like, okay, what just happened? Like, have I not done my job yet?
Oh yeah.
Another one that became quite evident to me is around being almost like feeling like being observed by the client, when the client is looking at you and you're feeling like you're being examined, and you're starting to doubt yourself, and thoughts come up to the surface like, okay, they see what I'm doing and they're not buying it.
Yeah.
They are not playing along was my word. They're not playing along, and then you become nervous and frustrated that your method or your way of being, quote unquote, is so transparent and inefficient that it just doesn't have a place to be here. So those are the top two that came up for me.
Oh, thank you. Those is fantastic. Thank you. And like I said, there's absolutely no judgment, because who hasn't had those fears at that time? That fear of being observed, like you say, and being found out. Oh, they know exactly where I'm going, and they're not buying it, like you said. And I don't know. But for me, one of the things that comes up with that is it's the what I do in response to that. I don't know whether that resonates with you, Sergey, but if we start to think that, we lose our presence, don't we? We get into our head, we come out of being present with somebody, and we can do things to try and up our game, if you like. I remember listening to one recording with somebody when I was mentoring them, and they had used one tool technique that they wanted to use to help the person think about something, and like you said, that and it seemed like they were stuck, and you could almost feel the panic listening to this recording, where this person just brought out another tool and then another tool, another technique, almost in desperation to get them somewhere, instead of being okay with, yeah, we're kind of stuck, or let's just, whatever, just being in that moment. Because I don't know whether it resonates with you, but we have to get to that place where we can be uncomfortable, where we can tolerate it. I used to say be comfortable with discomfort, but I'm not sure we ever get to be comfortable with it. But if we can tolerate it, and tolerate that our triggers, the thing that we are worried about, if that comes up in coaching, and that we can manage it. There's one of my supervisors. I'll just leave that quote and then I'll take the slides down for a minute. This is a friend of mine, Abu Dishabi, who talks about we need to give up trying to be a good coach to be a great one. I think when all of this stuff comes up, all of these triggers or thoughts, and it takes us away from being present, we get into performance, and we come out of just being with somebody. But let me just stop at that, because I've talked at you quite a lot there. Is any thoughts that are coming up for anybody as I've just talked through any of that?
There's also Anne Caroline in the chat wrote, judgment like they didn't make progress.
Sorry, say that again, Claire. I didn't quite hear you.
Anne Caroline wrote in the chat to the prompt from the last question, judgment like they didn't make any progress.
Right. Yes. Yeah. So we start to judge ourselves, don't we? And then, yeah. Did you want to expand on that? And
going back to the performance, and I really resonate giving up trying to be a good coach, like we can have been raised to be a good girl. So
yes,
we keep doing that in a different arena.
Exactly. The Robin Shohet, if anybody's aware of Robin Shohet, he's very he's got he's a big voice in the supervision world, but he really suggests what we need to do is get comfortable and almost invite our biggest fears. And we brought Robin in to teach on our supervision program at Henley, and he was sharing that if people start to say all of this stuff to him, somebody asked him, well, what if somebody told you this is rubbish, you're not helping me at all? Wouldn't that throw you? And he said, no, I just want to say to them, oh, I didn't realize I was supposed to do the work. This is your work, not mine. I mean, we can't all be quite as forthright as that maybe, but to invite that, to really take the sting out of it, almost what you were saying before, normalizing that, yeah, there'll be times when, I think about it, if anybody wants to tell me I'm a rubbish coach, I think, yeah, sometimes I am a rubbish coach. Sometimes I am. That's okay. What can we do that will make it better? And I guess it's a lot of experience gets us to that. But when we're worrying about, have I covered this? Have I done that? Have I done the other? It takes us right away from where we can really be our best. And I'm sure that you're at your best when you just relax into it. I know how many people I've heard, and Claire, I bet you've heard it as well, who say, oh, I did a great session the other day, but I wasn't recording it. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? Because you hadn't pressed that button, and suddenly you could be yourself. Um, and I feel like I'm on a bit of a mission to help people, to say to people, let's forget about all of these rules. Just have a conversation. I was the weekend I was teaching a small group, and all of them were researchers, and they were really struggling to get the beginning of a coaching session right. It didn't matter how much we talked about it, how much we practiced. And then I just had this kind of flash of, and I said, but you're all researchers. I'm guessing you're really curious to understand the questions and people's story about the questions that you're asking. What's different to getting to understand the beginning of, and it clicked, and they all said, oh yeah, of course. I was, so you're actually almost like they're putting a different hat on when they're going to coaching, instead of remembering we've all done this all of our lives, having these conversations. Why have we suddenly put all these rules in and put barriers? How's this landing with people? What's coming up for you as you're hearing this?
I can share. So thank you, Karen. So one thing that comes up for me as you talk through that is coaching being just a conversation. I've discovered so many times different expectations that people bring into the coaching relationships, including around the positioning of coaching and who is supposed to do what. And with some clients, as we know, it's easier because they kind of lean in and the conversation flows. With others, they're like, you're the coach, you tell me like what to do.
Yeah.
and when you probe into like, well, what would you like to get out of this engagement? What that open space for, and so on. And people are like, I don't know. And then you ask yourself the question, like, how much of the leaning in do you have to do? How much of the positioning do you have to do, or framing do you need to do before to help people to be okay with having just a conversation, as opposed to them waiting for you to tell them things or guide them. So that's one of the things that I'm working with right now, just gauging, seeing where people are, and then like, what's the best way to not what's the best way, but what's an optimal way to start with to begin working with a person. So I don't know if that resonates with others, or if any others have anything to add to that.
Well, I can certainly see some nods. Does that resonate? Yes, Vicky, you.
Yeah, so definitely that resonates. I appreciate that offer. And what was going on for me at first, when you asked the question, it was like, wow, that's liberating. And then, wow, self-trust is really important. So that's what's coming up for me, is that this is something that we can probably all find what's going to be that next step for me to get the additional self-trust and to see a nice reaction from it or a reaction, and then how do I respond to that? So,
absolutely.
was there for me. Thank you.
This is so great, and definitely that self-trust. I think I keep in mind something somebody said a long time ago about we have to trust ourselves, we have to trust the other person, and trust the process it works. And it can take us a while, can't it, to trust ourselves that we're okay. And you know, the more I've been coaching, the more I realize that the conversation we're having is often not the conversation we need to have. David Whyte, the poet, talks about that. The conversation we're having is not the conversation we need to have. So I've realized that the work that I used to put in when I first started, of trying to think of really good questions and really listen so I could almost repeat verbatim what somebody said, and all of that, and really get engaged in the content of the story, I realized I was putting my attention and my focus on the wrong things. That that conversation, the person that's talking, where I'm most add value and I'm most useful to somebody, and I think all of us are, is when we're noticing how they're telling the story, what's happening between us, which is why I think it's important that we're aware of what will trigger us, what's our thing, that might trigger us, but that we become more self-aware, but that we can relax in and just notice what's going off between us. And I use this analogy of, if we're looking at a lake and a still lake, a still body of water, and that's the conversation. And, the person's they're narrating what's happening, they're telling us their story. We might see a little ripple in the water, and that might be, we get a feeling about ourselves. We might start to feel stuck, or we might start to get a bit, I don't know, irritated or frustrated or something. I think that's the thing to put the attention on. So if you mentioned, Sergey, if somebody gets stuck, now my attention won't be in, oh, what can I bring in to unstick them? It's almost embracing the fact that somebody's stuck and saying, oh, that's interesting. I'm feeling stuck too. What do we need to do with this? What's going off between us? I noticed, it's 2 or 3 months ago, I was coaching somebody, and they were saying that, they needed to do something, to find some work, to earn some money. They'd been in a really big job. They had taken redundancy from that, and now money was running out. They needed to do, but this person was telling me that, well, they'd got their young children and they wouldn't be able to work long hours. The husband couldn't help that much, because he wasn't confident with the kids. They needed to be close for school. There were caring needs outside of that. And I noticed, which was really unusual for me, I noticed I started to feel a bit irritated with this person. And that's not a usual feeling for me, but it seemed like everything this person came up with, they were already putting their own barriers in. And then when I caught that I was feeling irritated, I thought, oh, so what's going off here? So that's the ripple, really. What's happening here? I'm not somebody who gets irritated that much, or, and a bit frustrated. But I started to realize this person just was putting so many blockades in. So I was saying, I'm starting to feel a bit stuck. And I'm just wondering, well, is it that you just can't find a job then? Are we not, what are we doing? We're not doing anything, because it was like, I'm exaggerating for effect, but it's like, I need a job from 10 until 2 with an hour off for dinner, but I need to earn 100 grand a year. It was that kind of thing. Well, we're not going to get that, are we? So, and that was the place that helped the other person get unstuck. So that was using my own frustration, if that makes sense. So my attention was not necessarily on, oh, how can we solve this issue? It was just, oh, what am I noticing that's going off between us in this room? I don't know whether that resonates with anybody. I wonder if we've got time for you to just in pairs, maybe even just have 5 minutes together, if that's okay, just to ask yourself a few questions. Oh, I just wanted to share that quote as well. I did add the bit about coaching because it's not about coaching at all, from Gloria Steinem, when she said the art of life is not controlling what happens, but using what happens. And I think that's what I was trying to describe with that experience, really. How can we use what's coming up? But I just wondered if you just went into smaller groups, twos, pairs, whatever, and just ask yourself some questions and just help each other to think about this a little bit, about what coaching rule or model or assumption do you rely on most heavily? And where might this be protecting you rather than being in service of the client? And what would a more courageous or responsive coaching approach look like in that situation? You don't have to answer those questions, but these are just some prompts for you to think about, of what is this about rule breaking? What's the kind of rule that you rely on so heavily? What are you holding tight that you could perhaps just experiment with letting loose? Is that okay, Claire? Just for about
Yeah.
5 minutes, because I recognise the time. I want to honour people's time.
Sure. And just before we go, there's two things in the chat.
Oh,
So
lovely.
Vicky wrote, using your own emotions as a signal, really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Maxwell
lovely.
wrote, it strikes me that some of what's being described here is the coach's expectations on the client.
Yeah.
And I appreciate your last observation about shifting to self.
Yes, lovely. Thank you. Really great stuff. Thank you.
And here's the breakouts, 3 in a breakout, and they're open.
Lovely. Thanks very much. See you in a few minutes. Seems a good sign that it took a while to come back. Oh yes, I said I'd remind you, didn't I, Claire? And then I didn't, to put the recording on. Anything anybody wants to share? Any fresh thinking that they've got? What's your freshest thoughts from that conversation? Don't leave me hanging. Somebody's got to have had an insight.
I think Fatima and I both arrived at the same outcome, and from our discussion, and that is that by trying to meet and demonstrate meeting the competencies actually detracts from presence and the natural intuitive coaching process
Yeah,
or coaching dance that happens.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. That's so true, Jill. It just I'm just going to repeat what you said. It just takes you away from that being present, and it kind of works against everything you're trying to do. When I love the Jane Austen quote, we've all got a better guide inside us, as if we would only attend to it. And if we could just let our intuition play, let it out to play for a little while, there'd be so much more that we were offering coaching. That's lovely. Thank you. Any other thoughts from anybody? I can't see everybody, so if you're wanting to, if you've unmuted and I've just not noticed, please just speak up, because I can't see you all. Anything anybody wanted to share? I'm sure you weren't this quiet in the groups. Well, let me just give a couple more slides just as we start to close. There we go. And this is, it kind of links to that Jane Austen quote. Really, it's only just been, I'd call it a whistle-stop tour here, just a little bit of a, hopefully giving you some thoughts, some food for thought about how much freedom you give yourself, or liberation, as I think Vicky said, about this liberation in coaching, to be yourself, to be a coach rather than do coaching. And so my quest, I feel that I'm on, is to help people understand they've got everything, you've all got everything you already need within you to be great coaches. If you just, think about working around those barriers, the things that get in the way, and knowing we are all just messy humans. And so, if you're working in partnership with somebody, just together and working and riffing, I like to think of it as riffing with what's coming up, you can't go far wrong, because as long as you're listening to somebody and you're fully present. And one of the things one of the chapters I've got in the book is talking about bird watching for coaches. How can we just look with interest at what's happening in the coaching, have a look into someone else's life, and just use curiosity really about, wow, is that how they see the world? I don't think you can go far wrong. And my final invitation to you really is to give yourself some permission, to write yourself a permission slip, as Brene Brown would say. Give yourself a permission and just write down, what are you going to give yourself permission to experiment with in your coaching practice? If it's one of the rules that you've talked about that you hang on to quite a lot, how could you loosen the grip on that a little bit? How can you trust yourself? Back to what Vicky was saying, how can you trust yourself a little bit more? What would it need? What would it take? So if you want to write yourself a little permission slip, that would be lovely. And just to say, Claire's very generously allowed me to put this up, just to say, if any of you want to stay connected, I'd love to stay connected on LinkedIn or anything else. There's a QR code that takes you straight to my LinkedIn profile there, that we could stay in touch. Or if you would like a signed copy of the book, you just follow that link and that will take you, or if you want to buy it from wherever you buy your books. But thank you for your time and your engagement tonight, or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are. But thank you for allowing me to just share some of my thoughts.
And thank you so much, Karen. So I've listened to this presentation twice today, and both times I got different things out of it. Yeah, it was early morning with coffee, and I haven't turned the light on in the room when we started, so it's gone dark now. Quite funny. Really appreciate your time today and your words of wisdom and reflection.
Thank you.
And pleasure. And for our community cafes, we've got another one on Thursday about the muddle of mentor coaching and all the changes that are happening in ICF with mentor coaching. So the homepage of our website has all the community cafes at the bottom. If you want to sign up for any of those, you're very welcome. They're all complimentary. Some are workshops, some are demos, and some are research. Keep in touch. Thanks again, Karen.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Have a wonderful evening or rest of the day, wherever you are in the world. And there's lots of links in the chat there for you as well.
Great prompts to keep for the self-reflective practice. I know I will journey with lots of them. Thank you so much, Karen.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Anne-Marie, Anna Caroline. Thank you.
Much.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Claire.